WhatsApp's the most successful construction technology tool ever built, right?
Yeah.
It's the official tool, whether IT frowns upon it or not, it's on the projects, people are using it. And the reason that they're using it is because if me and you, we don't work for the same company, that means we're unlikely to get access to the same tool, right? Because my company purchased the license, your company's it's got a different licensing agreement with a different software, so we can't be on the same platform. WhatsApp allows us to be on the same platform and communicate about the same thing. The other thing is free, right? Nobody's got to pay anything. The user doesn't have to pay for it, and it solves a problem.
Today, I'm joined by Prakash Senghani, co-founder and CEO of Navatech and a construction technology legend. Prakash led digital transformation at Acom, JLL, and Balfour Beatty, and kept noticing the same thing. Safety was always an afterthought, a form buried in someone else's tool. His dad was a carpenter who had to retire in his mid-40s through injury, and that's the problem that Navatech exists to solve. We talk about the hidden costs of poor safety that never show up on a balance sheet, and why Prakash argues WhatsApp is the most successful construction technology tool ever built, and what that tells us about adoption. This episode is part of our State of Construction Safety Technology Report. Link to download the full thing is in the show notes for free. Let's get into the episode.
Okay, Prakash, good to have you. So you're the co-founder and CEO of Navatech. Was there a specific incident or near miss or experience that you had that made you want to build in the safety tech arena?
So not one incident, but so I was, leading digital transformation in some large organizations, right? So Acom, JLL, Balfour Beatty, and all the technology that I was deploying. There was one thing that really stood out was that health and safety always seemed to be like an afterthought. It was like, here's a project management tool or here's a risk tool. There's a form in there, go and fill it out, and then that ticks the box for safety. The other thing was that my dad was a carpenter in the construction industry, and unfortunately, he had to retire early, so in his mid-40s because of injuries that he sustained to his back. And then I was deploying all of this technology and thinking, would my dad use any of this? Would it have helped him, like not have his injury and could he have still continued working? And the answer was no. And so I think that's the thing that really drove me to say, can I build something that can help keep people safe and particularly keep people like my dad safe? And so that was, the real kind of, I won't say there was an aha moment. It was kind of like built up over various different experiences coming together.
Very cool. Is there something that people should be aware of that isn't spoken enough about within like the safety tech or safety tech space and as it relates to the construction industry?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things, right? There's kind of unaccounted for costs and sometimes those costs are not monetary costs. There's cost to productivity, there's cost to morale, there's cost to people wanting to stay in the industry. We're having this huge resource crisis across the globe in terms of attracting people into the construction industry, and some of that I'm sure is to do with the fact that it's perceived not to be safe, right? It's not people's perception of the construction industry is that it's not safe, and so I think some of these secondary or tertiary costs to the business are really hard to account for. That you can't put a direct monetary value to it, but they do impact us, right? In terms of lack of productivity, lack of innovation, lack of good skills that we can attract and retain within the industry.
So this is, it's not just the point here being is like it's not just a piece of technology that helps you tick a box. It actually has like all of these third order or further effects that if you don't get your safety right on a project or a construction site or whatever, all of this stuff that is very hard to attribute any hard statistics to perhaps, but everyone that kind of knows or is familiar with this space would know that this is the impact that it has.
Yeah, exactly that, right? And even the other big difficulty, and it's not just with safety tech, it's with safety as a profession in general, is that it's so hard to prove a negative, right? So the absence of an incident, right, or an absence of an accident is so difficult to say that this was the thing that meant that we didn't have an accident. When you have an accident, you can do a root cause analysis and try and potentially find out what were the situations that attributed to that incident or that accident happening. But if you put a piece of tech in place and then accidents don't happen, it's really, really difficult, right, to say that it's because of this piece of tech that we that this accident didn't happen. And so some of the ROI calculations and things like that are so difficult to do. And that's not, this is nothing to do with or exclusive to do with safety tech. It's to do with the whole safety profession, right? Say, okay, we're going to spend X hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars a year on a safety team, right? How do you make sure that you're understanding the ROI of that team? And so if you got no accidents, you could say, okay, now we don't need the safety team at all. That's not true, is it? Right? Because the next day you could have one, right? And same, you could have the safety team, and for a whole set of circumstances that are beyond people's control, you could still have an incident or accident. Does that mean that that safety team is not adequate? So I think these are some of the challenges that we have, right, within the safety sphere, and they kind of by through osmosis, right, get transferred to us in safety tech.
Definitely.
One poorly managed incident. That's all it takes to demolish the entire profit on your project. And right now, the only thing standing between you and that disaster is your superintendent showing up at 3 a.m. buried in paperwork before the day's even started. That's why BreadCrumb exists. Not to add more technology to the job site, but to give the people running it tools that actually work the way they do. Safety plans signed off, orientations completed on any phone in any language, permits processed without the back and forth, no paper, no chasing signatures, all synced directly into Procore. With OSHA penalties reaching into the tens of thousands, that kind of oversight isn't just a nice to have, it's everything. Over 1 million workers across 50,000 projects globally have BreadCrumb in their pocket. Book a demo at breadcrumb.co. That's BreadCrumb.co. Links in the show notes. Major construction projects are complex, and construction managers know that every day things don't go as planned. Unfortunately, most don't know what and why until it's too late. The best construction leaders know that the secret to delivering on schedule is for everyone to be planning together, committing to targets, and tracking their performance every day. By combining look-aheads, weekly work plans, visual staging diagrams, and daily activity briefings into one multiplayer platform, Afex is where the world's leading projects are planned and coordinated. Join the largest projects and contractors across Europe, the UK, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, and discover why at afex.co. In construction, precision matters. Every budget line, every schedule, every document. But too often, project data is scattered across tools and departments, creating risky silos. That's where Autodesk comes in. Autodesk is the all-in-one construction management platform designed to connect your entire project operation, from opportunity through to tender, all the way to handover. With real-time dashboards, cost control, scheduling, procurement, and document management in one place, Autodesk gives you complete visibility and control. Trusted by contractors, subcontractors, and asset owners worldwide, Autodesk has powered landmark projects from shopping centers to Europe's tallest buildings. If you're ready to reduce risk, protect your margins, and deliver projects with confidence, discover Autodesk today. Visit archdesk.com, that's ARCH desk.com, and see how leading firms are building smarter with Autodesk. Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
Could you tell us, like, what is it's a very broad question, but like, what is the typical process in safety and construction?
I guess there's two kind of elements to it, right? There's compliance driven stuff, which is usually looking backwards, and then there's leading things, right? So how you can increase your organization's capacity to handle risk. So I'm gonna talk to you about those two different things separately, right? So the compliance driven things is historically all about looking at things that might turn into accidents or accidents that have happened and then understanding them. So someone cuts their finger, right? Let's just start with that, right? Someone's cut their finger and you're supposed to create an incident report and then understand what happened, what were the what happened in that situation that led to that person cutting their finger, right? And so, like, did they have the right education? Were they trained? Were they using the right tools? Did they have a briefing? Were they competent to do this thing? Were there any external circumstances that might have led to this accident? So looking back and understanding the scenario that led to the accident can potentially help you to prevent it in the future, right? Then associated with that is, okay, if you know these 5 different contributory factors to that person cutting their finger, where you're able to spot these, then you might have been able to prevent it. So then let's look at observations that those particular things happening, and then stop those from happening, so that you can then potentially stop that incident or accident from happening. So I'm simplifying this really massively. So one is, looking at the incident and understanding its root cause, and that's common, that happens. And typically that's a very paper-based heavy exercise. So as soon as an incident happens, someone records it either on a paper-based form or on an electronic version of that form. Then an investigation happens. You might interview some witnesses and talk to the person who had the accident and understand and look through manual records of training. So it might be a folder binder that they did a toolbox talk, or they did an induction, and make sure that those records are in place. And then the part to try and prevent it is you record observations. So every day when people are walking out on site, they see, okay, that knife has been left without its cover, or that person's not wearing safety goggles when they were sharpening a knife or something like that. All of these observations, to then say, okay, what did you do? I had a conversation with that person, and then note all of these down. And again, that's typically done on paper or a digital version of that paper, logged, then tracked to say how it was closed out, what was the solution, so that you can then see if there's any trends or patterns, right? If you're getting the same observation again and again and again, then you might need to do something about it, right? Carry out much broader training, retrain the person. Is it happening to a particular subcontractor? Is it happening on a certain area in site? And you can make data-driven decisions and do things about it. Then the other part of it is, increasing your capacity to manage risks. And these are things that are called like leading indicators. So training is a good one, providing training and education to the workforce, increasing their understanding and perception of risk. So those are really, really important things. The issue with some of that, the way it's currently done, is kind of like one size fits all. So, everyone gets herded into a room. They get given a PowerPoint presentation. It's usually done in English. The workforce in the industry is really diverse, in terms of where they come from, their risk understanding, their literacy, and all of those things. And, you can imagine people on a construction site are not used to being spoken to with a PowerPoint presentation, right? That's not how they've gone through the education program. So they're probably not even absorbing this information, right? That's not the medium that's best for them to absorb this information, but that's how it's done. And then they get asked to sign on a piece of paper to say that they've attended this thing. Sometimes they get given a quiz and multiple choice, and they're copying off their mate, and then say, okay, we understood and we understand the risks of doing it. And so what's supposed to be like a leading indicator to help you understand your organization's capacity and the people's capacity to manage risk is actually just a tick box exercise to cover your ass, right? And I'm being a bit harsh, but most of the time that's what it is. What we're starting to see now is a much more tailored program to individuals, right? So with some of the technology that we're seeing, and I don't know if I'm skipping ahead, right? Maybe to the next question, but what we're starting to see in both of those is much more contextualized, much more to the situation, the person themselves individually, and the situation that they're surrounding themselves in. So if I go to if I start with the second thing first, the training element of it, what we're starting to see is tailored training given to people in a medium that they can understand. So not everybody wants to be stood up and talked to in terms of training. Some people want to read it, some people want to watch videos, some people want to just listen and have it told to them just by on their own individually. Obviously, language is a big thing, so they want to be given this information in a language that they're used to understanding. And that might not necessarily be English. And again, sometimes they wanted it to have it individually, right? So look at it on the train or the bus or the car to work or something like that. And so with technology, we're starting to see that now, right? So people can choose how they absorb this information, in which language they absorb this information, and where they're getting this information, right? So that's changing the complexity of your training and getting people's risk understanding. And then we're also seeing technology change in the way we're capturing the compliance-driven things. So again, historically, we had paper. Then we went to digital versions of those paper-based forms, and that was considered to be digital transformation. That's digitalization, right? That's basically and actually in some cases that creates negative, right? You end up getting, because it's so easy to do, you end up getting so much data, and most of it's crap that then you lose the signal for the noise. and also there's not a lot more efficiencies. In actual fact, what we found sometimes was that actually takes longer for someone to fill out something on a digital form than it does on a paper-based form, right? So you go sign in, you got to find the form, you got to do a drop down, work out. Whereas, okay, where's the pen? Here's a paper. Write this down. Scribble it out. That you can't do those. You can't do those things on a digital form, right? And so what we're starting to see here is, with tools like AI, and that is that it augments this process. And there's two things. It speeds that process up, but also starts getting rid of those things that you don't necessarily need, or and improves the quality of that data coming in.
Yeah, very nice. So what I'm hearing is that there are two key areas in the safety arena. One is the compliance, and one is I can't remember how you worded it, but it's the capacity to manage risk to prevent like occurrences
Yeah,
of the safety
exactly.
violations or whatever. And the technology that exists on the market today, obviously we'll get into Navatech in a second, but typically the technology that exists in the market today globally is stuff that helps you either comply or increase your capacity to manage the risk. Cool. Okay. Thanks for answer. I think you did answer my question. Now I was going to follow up with how software tackles like the safety space. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Navatech then. I'll be interested to hear how you tackled it. And also, you've been in this space, Prakash, for such a long time. You must have seen like a hell of a lot, and you must have learned a shed ton as well about what really. I mean, let's face it, what doesn't work. So I'd be very, very, very curious to hear about this.
So look, I think there's a broad spectrum of what falls under safety tech, right? So you've got what I talked about, the digitalization of safety processes. And there is one, and I kind of disparaged about it before, but there is one good aspect to that, is at least when you digitalize some of the input methodologies, then you can start doing trend analysis on there, right? So there's no manual work of taking a paper-based form, putting into a system or putting into an Excel form and then running graphs and things like that, right? So data collection is actually a really onerous thing and takes quite a long time, especially to get good quality data. And so digitizing that does have an element of helping us to do that a little bit more efficiently. And so that's kind of like the base layer that we saw, right? And that was maybe like, I don't know, 10 years ago, we started to see the digitalization, and that was across the board. That wasn't just with safety. We saw that with project management tools and all of these things, like with BIM 360 and all of these types of form-based tools that were essentially replicating paper-based processes into a digital era. What we're starting to see now is as we've become way more mobile focused, so we went from desktop computing into mobile, is that those forms don't really translate well onto a mobile phone screen. The screen real estate is really small, so we're starting to see different input methods, right? So voice is becoming a big thing, right? So being able to input via voice. What we're starting to see is other devices. So smart glasses, for example. I think that's going to be the next wave of how we interface and interact with management systems, and particularly safety management systems. So vision is another one, right? So I think Jeevan speaks about the next wave of technology is going to need eyes, and that's going to come through vision, right? And so there's different ways of inputting and interfacing with technology, and I think that's the kind of evolution that we're seeing on top of digitalization, where it's becoming more digital, right? And the inputs themselves are digital to begin with, and then we're starting to see feeds coming in from CCTV cameras that are automatically being analyzed. And so in all of these things, whether that's using AI to capture the text, or using AI to capture the images or videos, is that we're starting to augment human effort and start taking out some of the lag that exists, right? So a piece of paper comes in, someone's got to put it into an Excel, or it goes into a graph or a dashboard, and then you've got to synthesize and understand what the data is telling you. Whereas with some of the tools now, you're starting to close that gap between the data coming in, or where the data is captured, and the analysis and the key decision point that's being made.
Yeah, very insightful. So I just to add some to your to what you were saying there, is that a key problem with the technology within the construction industry is about that data capture. So now it sounds like that data capture is being automated through things people are doing anyway, like maybe they're not wearing smart glasses, but whatever, there's CCTV on site, people are always talking into their phones, that kind of thing. Then this could unlock like a whole new era of I think probably the second part, maybe of what you described earlier, like the risk prevention. Does it have a place for compliance as well, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, right? So like, we're never going to get away from compliance, right? And unfortunately, it's part and parcel of, the fabric of the contracts that we sign, the assurance standards that we have, the governmental kind of framework that we work in. So there's going to be assurance, right? And part of that's to do with trust, and there's a whole bunch of kind of reasons why that. So it's never going away. What we can do though is make sure that it's not or it's as least burdensome as possible, right? So that it doesn't create a huge admin burden on us as organizations, and doesn't necessarily get in the way of doing the work. And its intention was never to do that. It's just become so overwhelming that it does, right? It stops it potentially, or the perception is that it's stopping you from doing the work, but it's actually there to try and help you do the work as safely and as efficiently as possible. It's just kind of lost its way a little bit. So the biggest thing I think is looking at how some of this is already done, and trying to remove any duplication, trying to make that process as efficient as possible, rather than whole scale try to change it using technology. And I think that's where some technologies kind of falter, right? Is where you come in with this brand new tool, and as well, it's great in theory, like it's gonna revolutionize the way that you capture information or analyze information, but what it means is that you have to whole scale change the way people are working on site. And that's on construction sites, that's going to be a huge amount of effort, retraining people, getting people on board, getting that embedded. Like you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. So where are we right now? Like, how is like the technology being used? And you can speak about Navatech, like, and how you're
So,
how it
okay,
currently
yeah.
works.
So what we're doing at Navatech, right, is the big thing that we're trying to do is make equitable access to technology, right? And we're an AI company, so our technology of choice is AI, but it's all about making sure that that the people who need it can get access to it. And I think that's one failure within construction tech that people don't really talk about a lot, right? Where a lot of construction tech has been focused on white collar workers, the people that sit in the offices, that it helps them create better presentations, better graphs, better dashboards, and all of these things. But the biggest cohort within our industry actually work on construction sites, right? They're the blue collar workers, for want of a better phrase. And what I want to do, what we're doing, is making sure that we can get the latest technology, the things that's going to make an impact to their lives, make it accessible to them. And so we're doing that in numerous ways. So I alluded to the language, right? That's something that's really important to us, is that our system is accessible through multiple different languages, and it's a language of choice, right? It's you choose the language that you want to interface with the technology. And I think that's super important, not just to make it accessible, but also for adoption, right? So that we increase our adoption rates. The second thing that we want to do is make the technology accessible and put it into the processes that people are already used to. So it's so easy to look at existing processes and say, that's wrong, let's shut it down, everyone move to a new process. But there's reasons why those processes exist, right? And most of the time it's because they're simple, they're easy, and people tend to take the shortest route, right? And so, and I've spoken about this with you before, but WhatsApp is a huge thing, right? I genuinely believe, and people think I joke about this, that WhatsApp's the most, I think WhatsApp's the most successful construction technology tool ever built, right?
Yeah,
and I only half jokingly say this, right?
Yeah.
You go to I don't care whether it's the official tool, whether IT frowns upon it or not, it's on the projects, people are using it.
Yep.
Right. And the reason that they're using it is because if me and you, we don't work for the same company, that means we're unlikely to get access to the same tool, right? Because my company purchased the license, your company's it's got a different licensing group with a different software, so we can't be on the same platform. WhatsApp allows us to be on the same platform and communicate about the same thing. We're a team when we're working on this project, right? Even though we're working for different. And so that's one big reason why it does. The other thing is free, right? Nobody's got to pay anything. The user doesn't have to pay for it. The company doesn't have to pay for it. And it solves a problem. It's simple to use. And you and I have never got any training on how to use WhatsApp, but we can use it quite efficiently and effectively and utilize most of its tools. And so if we go to then say, okay, everyone, you've got to stop using WhatsApp. And okay, what's the reason? Because, the data is not transparent on there. There's security issues with it. There's a stream of information. It's unstructured and we can't get to it. So instead of solving those three problems, what we're saying is, let's build a brand new tool and then stop you using this thing because of all the good reasons that you used it, they're ignored. But because of maybe these three reasons, you have to stop. So so what we're doing at Navatech is, okay, if we can get over the hurdle with IT, and I think we're going to talk about some of the challenges, then why change people? Why change the behavior of people when they're already doing something? They're engaging with safety. They're having conversations. They're solving problems around safety. Let's go to where our users are. So we found a way of getting our AI technology directly to where the users are. And that's been a massive difference for adoption. So what we're doing is, instead of getting people to change the way that they work and the behaviors that they already got, what we're doing is meeting our customers where they already are. And then where it's appropriate, we pull them into our interface, right? Where there's things that we can't do inside WhatsApp. Of course, WhatsApp wasn't designed to do some of the things that we need to do. We do those in our platform. So we let people, access and ask questions of health and safety documentation directly from WhatsApp. We let people raise observations or incident records directly from WhatsApp groups. They can do that in whichever language they want. They can do it with their voice. They can send a picture and ask, what risks do they see here and things like that. They get responses in whichever language they want, and from references to whichever documentation their organization wants them to refer to. And so that helps, make this technology accessible to the people that might not ordinarily have got it. And that's not just because, they're not literate in terms of how to understand and use the tech, but maybe the organization decided, I bought 50 licenses and I'm only going to give it to these 50 people who are senior, and I'm not going to give it to the general workforce, right? So we're making sure that we get this technology in the hands of the people that matter.
Yeah, very cool. Therefore, and then like, how long does it typically take for someone to onboard on Navatech?
So we're pretty quick. So if you don't want any customization and everything kind of out of the box, we can be up and running in like 2 days.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
fast.
relatively quick. Yeah. It's quick, right? And again, purposely so, right? Because we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Literally, like if you want, you could put our phone number into your WhatsApp group, and then do a bit of a registration, and then the next day we'll train everybody, and you could be up and running.
Very cool. What does a typical onboarding look like, say, in the first week?
So typically is data gathering first. So understanding, what regulation, what documents, what standards and things like that you use in an organization. What the kind of project breakdown structure is within the organization. So what the hierarchy is in terms of, as an organization, do you have divisions? How many projects have you got? And then so we then configure the platform to that. And so that's typically the first couple of days. And then the configuration happens. Then we do a sandbox environment, get a few super users. They test it out, iron out any kinks and things like that that might be specific to them as an organization. Then the second week we start doing full rollout, right? And we usually start with 1 or 2 projects and then roll them out and then move sequentially to the wider organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Makes sense. And the idea being that everyone on a job site in an organization has access to this tool, like no matter of seniority level, yeah. So from all the way from the
Absolutely.
field to the top, as high as it needs to go.
Exactly. And then we've got rules and roles and permissions and things like that to control what people can and can't see. But yeah, the idea is, and our business model for charging also reflects that. So we don't charge per user, so we charge per project, right? And the whole idea, the whole premise of that is so that no one is discriminated against in terms of getting access to the platform. So you shouldn't not get access to the platform because your company doesn't want to pay a license for you.
Yeah, very cool. Are you currently? I know you touched upon it earlier, and it's something that you're looking at. Are you like actually integrating into some of these tools, like the wearables or computer,
Yeah.
CCTV, smart glasses, that kind of thing? Yeah, could you just talk about that?
Yeah. So CCTV, I don't know. Can we talk about other companies that we're integrating with? I don't know
Of
if we're
course,
allowed, but
yeah.
so Evercam, we're working really closely with Evercam, who I think are one of the leaders when it comes to like vision analysis. We're hopefully going to be working with Open Space as well. So we're trying to plug into some of the APIs and use that vision rich information
Mm-hmm.
to enhance what we're doing. Right. So look, we had a choice. We could have gone and built our own vision models, and then integrated them in, but that's not what we chose to be experts in, right? We chose to be experts in the text and voice based kind of AI, and other companies have gone down the route of vision AI. So why not work with them, right? Instead of
Yep.
reinvent the wheel and do stuff ourselves. So yes, so examples in both of those is that these companies are really good at capturing visual information, both static images, 360 images, and CCTV feeds, analyzing that information, and then once it's analyzed, we can then determine the workflows and the impact these things are going to have from a safety perspective on that particular project, right? And so it runs through our system until closure, and then brings these things back together again. So those are two things that we're actively working on right now. And then within our roadmap, yes, we've got we've got loads of things. So smart glasses is something that there's a contractor in the UK that's asking us to look at how we can interact with smart glasses. We did some tests with the Meta glasses. So Meta is obviously WhatsApp's a Meta company, and so with the Meta glasses, you can directly put messages into a WhatsApp group. Our AI sits in that WhatsApp group, and so we're kind of testing some of those things out. It's showing early promise. It's not it's not infallible yet. There's some issues with it, but I think that's the direction of travel. That would be really interesting. And then the big one for us is robotics, right? So, these four-legged dogs that can walk around and they've got payloads such as either 360 cameras or normal cameras and things like that. I think that's really compelling. It's really interesting. It opens up a whole different kind of, ethical and moral dilemmas with construction sites and things like that. But being able to consistently get photographic information and being able to send these things out at whatever time of day and things like that, and capture this visual information and feed it in, and then be able to get better risk understanding about what might happen on a construction site. I think there's a real compelling use case there.
Yeah, very cool. Nice. Sounds very advanced, actually. So can you tell us about integrations? Like, do you integrate with the key ERP players?
Yeah. So Oracle in this part of the world. So we do a lot of work in the Middle East. So Oracle based systems are really popular. So Unifier, Aconex, and stuff like that. So we already do an integration into those. We're integrated. We're on the Procore marketplace, so we integrate with Procore. Some of that is starting to get a little bit fuzzy now because they've got their own AI tools and things like that. So the process of getting onboarded is starting to become a little bit more onerous, but it's not. And I understand why. Autodesk, we're not actually currently integrated, but we're working on integration. So we're really led by our customers. If our customers ask us to integrate into a platform for a reason, then we build that integration. And so we're not proactively building integrate, or apart from Procore, we haven't proactively built any integrations. It's been very customer driven.
Yeah, very cool. Who can you just tell us briefly, like, who is the target customer for Navatech?
So actually, we've got customers as both client and developer owners. We've got consultants, and then we've got construction contractors, right? GCs. And what's really interesting is that it's different in different jurisdictions. So if I talk to you about Saudi Arabia, for example, there the client owners are really involved in the tech stack, right? They intimately want to know, what the tools are. They want to control the data flows. They want to control and own the data, because that's just the way that they've been set up and operated in. In the UAE, it's very different. In the UAE, the developers kind of push this down to the supply chain and then say, this is the responsibility of either the consultant or the contractor. And so we're finding more success talking to that cohort of people. And in the UK, it's a bit of a mixture, right? I think it's probably going to be closer to the UAE model than the Saudi Arabia model, where it's going to be the general contractors that we speak to. So I know I'm not answering your question directly. So it's kind of, it depends on the jurisdiction, right? Depending on which country we're working on, and kind of just the operating model that some of these organizations are working under.
Yeah, fine. But the point here is that like, is there like an ideal project size, or does it not really matter? It could be used across any construction.
No. So this is the interesting thing. So we've got projects that are the mega giga scale, right? So we're working on across like these huge projects, and then we're also working with fit out companies, right? So these projects are relatively small. I think from a safety perspective, like even if you're working on a giga project, the problem is not giga, right? The problem is down to the individual project and the project team, right? And so that we're solving the problem there, and that problem can be solved at scale to whatever size you want.
Fair enough. That sounds good. How do you deal with defensibility of the solutions when, like, obviously there's a big talk about like the big the big companies like getting their toes into every kind of space. Like, what's the advantage of using like Navatech versus, I don't know, what's the danger that someone like Anthropic or ChatGPT announces a safety tool in construction in the next few months.
So that's I'm not afraid of that, right? I think that the likelihood of that is really small. Do you know who the biggest kind of threat at the moment is our customers themselves using Claude and Anthropic to build their own tools, right? So it's not Anthropic. So Anthropic are not going to build specific tools for construction. They're going to build a platform that allows you to build the tools that you want, right? And so the competition, or the thing that's probably the scariest, is our customer who's Mr. General Contractor A, right? He has, or she has an IT team or an innovation team that gets hold of Claude Code or anti-gravity or something like that, and says, we're gonna build our own safety management system, and this is what we needed to do, and this is the thing, and be able to kind of create a POC quite quickly, right? So the fear isn't that they can replicate what we do, because we know that the effort that goes into making sure that the app's secure, that it's scalable, that you've got access controls and all this stuff. That currently is not easy to do through some of these coding applications. But what they are really able to do is build up POCs really quickly, get buy-in, which means that that it's an added piece of friction for us to try and deploy into these organizations. And that is something that I'm more worried about than Procore doing something similar to what we're doing, or Autodesk doing something similar to what we're doing, or Bentley doing something. I think that, and even that for startups, I don't think that's ever really been the fear, because that's not how these big organizations work, right? These big organizations usually have a 2-year product roadmap, right? And for them to suddenly change it because they've seen what you're doing is actually impractical, right? And very rarely does that happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very rarely does that happen. But with the speed of prototyping now, and prototyping software, and being able to code out software, and this is something I'm having regular conversations with other startup founders about, is that our customers basically changing the paradigm of software as a service, and then building stuff in-house. In order for them, I'm not worried that's going to completely ruin our business model. What it's going to do is probably just make the sales cycle even more difficult than it is, right? A bit more longer, because it's just more questions that you have to answer about, why our technology, why our solution is better than the one that their first year graduate was able to knock out in Lovable, for example.
Yeah, even then, yeah, like you say, it's a harder line of questioning. And no matter what you tell them, I guess until they feel the pain, they won't appreciate how difficult it is to replicate something like Navatech, and successfully implement and maintain it, and keep it up to date with the latest updates and technology and integrations, like some of the stuff that you described earlier with the vision models, etc.
But just to your point though, right? So okay, so now the flip side of that, where you asked me about defensibility, right? So how do you build moats and be defensible? Okay, so the technology, and I think this has been the case even before AI. I think AI just exacerbated it. Is the tool itself, the technology itself, isn't ever defensible. Someone with given enough money and time, someone could replicate anything. You could go and build a Procore, right? And okay, you could maybe do it faster now, but you've always been able to do that, right? If you got the right set of skills, a little bit of cash together, you could replicate Procore. The reason Procore and some of these guys are successful is because they're solving a real pain point that they understand really well, and they've got distribution, right? They've got a means to get their software out to people. So those two things have always been the moat. I think they're even more important now. So you come up with an idea, even internally, you come up with something that you want to vibe code or do whatever you want, right? You might have a true understanding of that problem set, so you tick one of the boxes, but have you got the means to be able to scale and deploy this within your organization? So that includes safety and security and access control and all the things that you said, maintenance and update, and most organizations are not set up for that.
And what happens when the guy that built it goes on holiday for 2 weeks?
Yeah, this has not been a challenge just now, right? And I can give you so many examples of companies that have built internal health and safety tools. There's a massive contractor in the UK that's built it. Then the person who built it left, right? And so there's no way for them to update the code, do anything like that. And so now they're stuck with it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. Can you just tell to us a little bit about the competitive landscape? Like, who are you typically up against when you're trying to close deals with people for product?
So again, it varies depending on who our customer is, but generally, it's the broad-based project management tools. So the Procores, the Autodesk, and those in the world, and so they've got safety modules, right? Kind of because they have to, and it kind of ticks a box, but they're not really specialized in what we do. So sometimes we come up against them. Other times you've got specialist health and safety technology, and these tend to be vertical SaaS. So, some of the biggest players in the world are Enablon, Quality, Sci360, some of these so these are well-known, compliance tech, regulation tech companies, right? Who have got safety, security, and quality management tools that they've developed over years, right? And a lot of them span cross industry, so they're not just made for construction. They also do oil and gas, and they do mining and manufacturing, and it spans across all of these kind of sectors. So typically there's that, and then will you be surprised? I don't know, but also pen and paper. Pen and paper is our competition. Excel spreadsheets is our competition, right? Some people are just, they don't see a problem with it. They're happy with it, and that's fair enough as well, right? If that's you found a way to make that thing work, and you're creating a safer site because you understand the limitations of this, and it's working for you, fair play to you.
If when people are considering solutions in this space, are there any repetitive mistakes or lessons or things that you can share with these people that they make or you've come up against when they're evaluating and purchasing and even implementing some of this software?
There's one massive one, and that's adoption, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, right? You can see, fancy models, like fancy PowerPoint presentations and screens, and statistics of that. Every single one, when it hits reality and getting people to use them, that's the biggest challenge, right? That without a doubt, right, is the biggest challenge that it's both it comes up against when we're going up against our competitors, but also it's an opportunity. So when we go to talk to people, they've got some of these, legacy systems, these vertical SaaS systems. The biggest problem they have is they can't get people to use it. They can't get people to open up the app because it's clunky, the user interface is rubbish, like all of these things, and therefore they can't get the data in, or that people just game the system. So they're using some other system, WhatsApp, Teams, chats, and that's the system that's actually working on site. And just to tick a box, they then copy and paste information into the system. It's sanitized. People make mistakes. Not all of Sometimes the information is missed. It gets left in these informal channels, and it doesn't make it across. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge that everyone needs to understand is the adoptability. I don't even know if that's a word, but adoptability of the solution.
Very good. Any free questions people should ask they're evaluating a vendor in the space?
Yeah. So what's on the roadmap? Because the technology is moving really, really quickly. Again, the adoption rates. So what are your adoption rates in terms of what the percentage of licenses that you're selling, or the number of people you expect to use, and how much actually use it on a daily basis. And then the third one, I guess, is
You don't need three, by the way, but
yeah, I don't
that's
know
just
what
an
the third one
arbitrary
is off
number.
the top of my head.
That's me just tricking. Actually, I've asked the question to a few people, and everyone's like, I don't know if there's three. I'm like, I just said three. You
Yeah.
don't have to have three. Cool. So, fast forward 10 years, if you could say that safety technology is fully solved, quote unquote, what does it look like on a job site?
That it's not called safety technology anymore, right? It's just part and parcel of everything that you do. Like, it's integrated into the way that you work, and so it's not distinct, right? So it's nothing. I don't have to go and do something for safety. This is how I do work, right? This is what we do, and it's combined and ubiquitous in everything that we do. So, I'm going to start a job. So this is how I do it. I'm going to look at what's planned, and what's planned means, okay, I've got these permissions. I'll take a picture. It verifies that all the controls are in place. I've got the weather forecast. Okay, that means that I can go, carry out the piece of work. Hopefully it happens as exactly as how I planned it. If it doesn't, I input and say, okay, this thing didn't work as I did. So the next time somebody else goes and does it, they understand and you can do it. And so it just becomes the way that you do things, right? It's not a distinct piece of technology that's separate from everything else that we're doing.
Yeah, very cool. Nice. Okay, Prakash. Yeah, I think that's good. Covered a lot there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are you pushing anything at the moment? Initiatives?
Yeah, so we really are pushing this kind of WhatsApp thing, right? So go meet your customer, meet your workers and users where they are. Don't get them to change their behavior. You change your system to make sure it works with them. And so we're trying to help people push and say, get an understanding of what's in what data you've already got flowing through your system, because what you'll be really surprised with is what it can tell you, right? One of our customers said something really interesting to me. He says, my WhatsApp chat is actually more useful than a CCTV feed, right? So he's got a CCTV camera. He goes, the CCTV camera can't see around the corners, right, from where we're seeing, but the person can, and and lots of them are inputting things like on a regular basis. The other thing is that the CCTV can't smell. So, if someone tells me, I can smell gas in the basement, the CCTV camera can't tell you that, right? And so that's a really interesting way of thinking about some of these informal channels, right? These informal channels are giving you a way better insight about what's actually happening on your site than even cameras, which are supposed to be giving you this insight.
Yeah, very cool. I like it. Cool, man. Okay, thank you, Prakash.
Brilliant. Thanks
Cheers.
a lot, Owen.